Welcome to Trauma Undone. Today we are with an incredible human being. She is just so wonderful, and I'm so happy to have her on our couch. And she is dealt with the recovery of trauma through your space, through healing, and she is the feng shui specialist, Marie Diamond. Marie, we are so happy to have you on our show today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Natasha, for having me.
So, Marie, just to put into perspective, I'd love for you just to briefly tell people who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a global transformational teacher and speaker. I'm well known from being the star in The Secret, the book and the movie, and I'm a global renowned feng shui master, where I have more than 1 million students online. Teaching them about energy in their space, how to improve their life, their health, their relationships. And also I have been teaching for many years meditation and helping people to overcome their blockages, the issues also with abuse, their traumas through the work of forgiveness.
That's amazing. So it seems, my show is really all about like the recovery from trauma and that it's a possibility. How, before we move on to forgiveness, how can you use your space to do that?
Well, we always say what is outside of you is also inside of you. What's inside of you, you also reflect outside. So I see a lot of people that had traumatic experiences that then they will have a space around them that reflects that. And it can be, first of all, I always see it, people with a lot of trauma have sometimes difficulties to create a clutter-free area. Their home, they just are feeling so emotional inside, and they cannot really create a space around them that is balanced and in harmony. And so they are collecting a lot of clutter, or they just don't know how to organize well because it's in themselves already, very difficult to organize their feelings. So it will be hard around them. So the first step I always have to do with them is to help them to declutter and to organize their environment. The second thing that I see is that they will, really have problems sometimes with what they put around them as images. So most of the time, because there's so much going on within their own heart and mind and their subconsciousness from the traumas they have experienced, is that, or they will have a lot of things around them, like so much images, so much different statues, that it will be like an overwhelm. Or they just have the opposite. They don't want to put anything around them because everything is such an extra sensory reaction, and they want things super calm. Like they won't put any images around them. So it's always like I feel like an extreme with them. And so then I always have to find the right way what to place around them. And then of course we're using feng shui. And based on your birthday, you can actually find out where are good directions for you to check this out. And especially when people had trauma, we look at what we call the relationship direction, because relationship is where the traumas are occurring, of course. Abusive parents or abusive partners, or anything that has happened in their life, their relationships are really need a lot of healing. So people can actually check this out. They can go to go on a phone and check out my free Marie Diamond app, and there they will put in their number and their birthday, and so their birthday and their gender, and they will get a number, and that number will indicate which directions are good for them in their environment. And one of them is a relationship direction. So the app will help you with going there. And so you look at what's in my relationship direction, and most of the time people that are looking then what is there, it reflects somehow the image that they feel inside of them. Yeah, I remember somebody who was quite broken inside of themselves because of the trauma that happened, is that she had put in that area all statues, and the statues were broken, or they were missing an arm or something broken, right? And she said, why do you put it there? She said, yeah, it feels like I like that. And I said, yeah, but you keep reflecting what you feel inside of you. Let's put something out there that creates more harmony and more peace. And so we started changing that. And after doing this, what happens is she gave herself permission to start healing inside of her. So it's always like the reflection of what is inside is outside, and vice versa. And so a little bit after that, she attracted a therapist that just was really doing amazing work with her to help heal her trauma. So we always have to say sometimes we cannot work on the inside of us because we're not ready for it, but we can already start working on our environment, because ultimately, people that have trauma experiences, they don't always trust the environment where they live in when they were younger or in any experience. So what if they could start creating in their own home a harmonious and peaceful environment so they can open themselves to get easier healed by, from all the trauma they have.
That's so interesting. So I first do want to say, after we met the first time, I downloaded your app and I look at it daily because it's always got such a lovely message in it, and I use it, but I completely overhauled my space.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
I was like, I have to, it never felt like home, and I just did this, and now it's completely different environment. It's
amazing.
Different space, and I did that because of you. So I'm like really grateful.
I'm so happy to do that.
And I used your guidelines as to how, like, where we should go.
There's all videos in it, and so you have a lot of steps you can take, but it's very simple. Feng Shui is really the system of energy. It's like acupuncture for the body, is acupuncture for the home. Like you're focusing on activating certain things. There can be certain colors, certain images that you place. And by turning things around, it's like you're shifting the energy inside of you. Because I've seen so many times people saying, I cannot get out of the blockage. I cannot get out of it. I said, why don't we start and what we look outside of us? And then it's like a very gentle change in ourselves that start happening. And so did you feel that?
I did, and that was actually going to be my next question. Is like, how can you change the outside to change the inside? And you kind of just answered that.
Well, it's like a mirror reaction that we have. And so we have something in our brain that's called mirror neurons. And so we sometimes attract people and they are a mirror of ourselves. But also our environment is the mirror of ourselves. So we can wait till the environment changes, but why don't you start changing the environment, and it mirrors back in your subconscious, and then people start attracting different situations, different people, different experience. And so it's a very gentle way of healing by changing the energy around you, and then people start feeling more at home, feel more at peace. You feel like, oh, it's like I love my home now again. But when you feel at home in your home, you start feeling more at home in your own heart.
That's beautiful. That's such a wonderful way to look at it.
Yeah.
So I know that you have also gone through, experiences in your life, and you've come out on the other side, shining and being a beacon of light to the world.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, like what it was like for you to heal and to get to where you are today?
Yeah. So I grew up with a father that had a huge post-traumatic stress from World War II, because he was much older than me. And so that was the first thing as a child, I had to walk on eggshells constantly because of his temper outbursts, but also he was also physical abusive. And so a few times, I really think I almost didn't make it, like physically, to stay alive. And so that was a very intense experience. And I would say what started helping me out of it is at 7, very early on, I started meditating. Yeah, I came across that. I was reading about it, and I didn't know what I was doing, but later on I understood it was meditation. And I started seeing that my life started being more calmer and more peaceful, and I could, feel that I could handle more what was going on around me. And it was really interesting because when I was 15, I had a near-death experience. I was almost run over by a truck, and that shifted something also in my father, because he almost lost his daughter. And that's when I started knowing about feng shui, and somebody shared steps for me, and I started doing that, and I started changing my relationship direction. And very interesting, my relationship with my father started changing, but still there was so much hate in me for the things he had done to me, that it took me a while, till I was about 25 years old. He was diagnosed by terminal cancer. And he had like 6 months. And I thought like, well, that's 6 months. I need to be able to deal with this myself. And I knew that if I could get to a point where I could forgive him, that ultimately that would be helping me. I became very clear about that. But of course, that's a hard step to do, because then I found out so many more things. I found out in these 6 months that my father was a predator, that he had sexually abused several of my friends when I was a teenager. So there was a lot about like revelations that came to me. But I still had in my mind, whatever he is, if I can forgive him for that, or come to a place that I can be okay with that. And so the night before he died, I really was sitting next to his bed, and I was like, I need to forgive him. If it's not for him, at least for myself. And so I forgave my father, and I forgave him in the name of all the women he had ever abused. Wow. And so also for what he did to my sister, what he did to my nieces. Like, there were a lot that I found out that were, really negatively being abused by my father. And so that night, it was such a lift from myself that I was like, okay, the night I forgave my father was like the most major shifting energy for me. And so he passed on the next day. And, I felt like at least I was able to say it while he was, he was not awake anymore, but at least he was alive still. I would say if I would not have done that, I was not going to be the woman I am now. Yeah, that is for sure. It set up a whole relief for myself, and a lot of amazing things started happening after that for myself, because, literally I hated my whole life till I was 25, my father. Every day I had such a hate feelings towards him. But what I start understanding, that hate towards the one that abused me and the one that created trauma, that ultimately that hate was affecting me more than it was affecting him. Yeah. And so I was like, this man is dead. I don't want this to affect me any longer. Yeah. And so that's, I would say it was an inner feng shui, an inner clearing for me, what happened. And since that moment, I started working a lot with, people that had experienced abuse. Meanwhile, I had studied law, I had studied criminology minor and psychology minor and psychiatry. So I was really like focusing on understanding the human psyche, I would say. And later on, when I started doing a lot of personal coaching, personal mentoring, I attracted a lot of women and men and children that had gone through trauma, and passing on the message that how important it is for the victim to, first of all, to forgive themselves, because they always think somehow they are responsible for what the trauma has happened to them. To forgive themselves that for the feelings that they had, for the hate, because I thought I need to also forgive myself. I had all this hate, yeah. And then to start forgiving the other, it's a whole process. I mean, it took me quite a few years to get to that point. I would say it took me from my 15 till my 25, right? So it's not overnight. Even if it seems seemingly and easily, it was not. But I also knew if I just would say, I'm starting to forgive, I'm willing to forgive. You don't have to say, I forgive, but like I'm open myself. And I also forgive myself for all the pain that I held on to all these years. I had to forgive myself for hating someone. Yeah. And because of that, hurting myself. Because I was sick all the time, because of all the emotions I was holding on to. And after I forgave my father and I forgave myself for all these emotions, my health improved so much. So, over the years, I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements about this topic and classes, because I feel forgiveness is a key factor for undoing trauma.
I believe that too, but I feel like it's such a hard step to take.
Yeah.
And something that came up for me personally, recently I was doing a forgiveness meditation, and it said, like, think of the person, while I was doing this guided meditation, think of the person that you need to forgive, And surprisingly, my father came up for me.
Yeah.
And it's somebody that, he's a person for me that I kind of compartmentalized and put it away and didn't think that it was affecting me in any way anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like, once you get out of an abusive relationship, you can compartmentalize that part, or you try and pack that away and not to deal with it. And how is that different to forgiving somebody? I just want to make it clear for the listeners and viewers, is that how is that different to when you just put it away, stuff it down, to actually bringing it up and forgiving?
Yeah. So when you're compartmentalizing things, it's still alive in your field. So think about if your energy field is like a house, yeah? You actually, if you're putting it away, you're putting it behind, the door somewhere in a room, and you don't open that room anymore, yeah? But that room is still there, it's still gesting, it's still working, the energy is still there. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to go on with my life and visit all the other places of the home. That is my energy field. But forgiveness is actually saying, I'm willing to open that door and look at it, but look at it with a level of compassion, right? A level of compassion, first of all, for yourself. And as you're doing forgiveness work, you're actually saying, I'm going to clear out that space, yeah? And because it's possible that space is really affecting already the other rooms of your home, yeah, because it's so much clutter. Let's say it becomes, moldy, and it's like it becomes energetically really toxic, yeah, and it kind of starts spilling over to other areas of your home. Perhaps the smell of, it's like the feeling, whatever it is, because it is close away. You feel safe, but I always say it's only when you start feeling safe is that when you start forgiving, yeah. And because you will start feeling more safe with yourself, first of all, with your own emotions, and you'll start feeling more safe towards the world. Because what has happened, you can say this was a very unsafe experience. I mean, it will stay an unsafe experience because it was unsafe. But to start being more feeling safe by being in the world. I mean, I was somebody who was super afraid to even be with people. I was super shy. Reaching out to people, to even have good relationships, to even have loving relationships, I was very, very reluctant till I was 25. After I cleared that, that's when I met my husband, and I was open to have a safe, good feeling relationship with somebody. And so because I was not aware how it spilled over in other areas of my life. But forgiveness is saying, I'm going in, I'm going to be, it's something to be brave for. It's courageous when you are forgiveness. If you lock it behind, the door, you think it's courageous to do that, but actually it is not helping you in the long run. So you're going in, opening that space for yourself and saying, I'm willing to have a look at it. And it's always good to work with somebody, or as a therapist or a psychologist or whoever you feel comfortable with. Yeah, it's hard to do it by yourself. It's always good to work with somebody on that level. So that helps you to get, to a safe feeling, to open that door and to start unloading the door and start unloading the room and saying that this doesn't work. I'm having a look at it step by step. It takes time, but you will start seeing that other parts of your life will start feeling so much better. My health improved, my relationships improved, my confidence improved. I would not be the one that is now speaking for sometimes thousands of people if I would not have dealt with that. Yeah, so you can feel it's okay to take it away, but ultimately, long run, it will affect you.
Yeah. There's that famous saying, I don't remember who said it, but it's like, having unforgiveness for somebody or resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die.
I've heard that one. Yeah, I totally agree with this one. You're there because, I was hoping that my father would die, and then when he had terminal cancer, like how many times that I said, oh, I hope this man dies, But then when it happens, yeah, you like confronted like with your own hate that you had, and then taking care of him because he didn't want to go to a hospital. So my mom and I took care of him in his last months. And suddenly there was this, old man that I had to wash and dress and help to the bathroom. And suddenly he was this, very vulnerable man. So it was a huge confrontation for me. But I felt like, yeah, this is the time I need to do that. But like I said, it took some time to go over this. But I think it was one of the best things I could have done for my own well-being. Yeah.
So when you're forgiving somebody, is it best to start with forgiving yourself or to start forgiving the other person?
Well, I would say start first with yourself. Yeah, because the other person can be still so traumatic to even think about that person. Yeah, or the experiences you had. So start first with forgiving yourself for the emotions that you had, for the pain that you allowed to stay with you, because the pain is not caused by you, but you held on to that pain because somehow it feels, I would say, a good thing when you hold on to that pain, because then you feel like it's something that we always want to hold on to a pain that we know, interesting enough. Yeah. And we feel like then we're more alert and we feel more safe when we know the pain. Yeah. So one of the things I just say to people, start writing a forgiveness letter. Yeah. So just write a letter to yourself. Hello, dear, Marie, dear Natasha. I am opening up myself to forgive myself for, and you start writing the bullet points, like for the pain I kept having, for the hate I have towards this man or to this woman or the situation, or the fears I have. So write this down, and at the end, say, I love you and I forgive you, and then always I say, sign it. Yeah. And then burn this letter. Yeah. So go outside when it's a sunny day and burn the letter like around noon. And as you're releasing it into the universe, into the open space, a lot of people start feeling a lot of emotions. It's like they're crying, recently I was in Jordan and I did this with close to 500 people. We all wrote this forgiveness letter. And we put like a big fire ritual, and we did that. And people were so touched and so moved and supporting each other. So if you have a hard time doing that, ask a friend to stay with you, because it's like by burning the fire, it helps you to release that energy. Yeah. So that's the first thing you can do. And then when you start feeling ready to perhaps forgive the person that has created the trauma for you, you can actually also start writing a letter to them. You never give it to them. You always write it, I say, to their soul. Like, you don't even write it to the person that they are, but there's always light in somebody, even if they are not aware of it themselves. So we call that the soul of somebody, or the spirit. And so you write it to the spirit of, or the soul of that person. And because most of the time, a lot of people that have gone to trauma, they never were able to say to that person what they really felt about it. Yeah, because they're afraid of that person, or that person is not longer in their life, perhaps. But what if you could have an honest conversation with that person and say, this is what I didn't like, and this is, what needs to stop, or, I hate you for this. Like, just let's say, this one of us is the victim, none of us is the abuser, is like having that conversation from spirit to spirit almost. And so people write it, and again, they burn that letter. Yeah, but first to the self-forgiveness letter, and then they burn that letter and they send it off to the spirit of that person, wherever that person is, can be alive, can be passed on. And it is such a beautiful ritual. And one morning I woke up with that idea, and I started doing that with my father, and that helped me so much to cope with it. Yeah, because I was not able to share with him everything, right, what I felt. And so he was already in a coma when I had that idea, and he was not conscious to respond to me. But at least I felt I had told everything. And you can do several letters if you feel, to that. Or perhaps it's a person you don't even know that abused you, or don't know their name, but at least you can write it to the soul of the one that created the trauma for you. It's a very powerful, very simple concept, but I've done this for sure. 10,000s of people have done this with me, and they all felt that there was like an opening for them or a start of the forgiveness, because it doesn't mean it's like you write it and it's done. It doesn't, but it opens the energy. You give yourself permission to forgive. Yeah, giving yourself that permission really shifts something in you. Yeah. And then most of the time people tell me, like, after that, or I had dreams, or I had an insight, or attracted a good healer, a good practitioner that helped me along, a good therapist. Because sometimes you don't even attract, good support because the pain is too much. Yeah. So by opening that up, you will start seeing, wonderful things come your way.
That's beautiful. So how do you know when you've forgiven somebody?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was that when I was thinking about my father, I didn't feel hate anymore in my heart. Okay. Yeah. And it took me a while after that, but now I can really look back at him, and I look at the things that have happened, and it's like they're not colored anymore. Yeah. So there's not an emotional color around the situation. Like, okay, these things happen. I can look back at it, and I still see it. Yeah. But I don't feel any emotion around it anymore. And then a lot of other things that happened that were really nice, but I forgot about it. Oh. Yeah, started coming back in my mind. I was like, yeah, that was a good moment with him. I forgot about it because the hate was so dominant. I forgot all the good moments too. Yeah, because there were some good moments, and like looking back at him and say, yes, he had, he was his worst enemy, and he was, really not a good man in many moments. But I can say now, I loved him. Yeah. And I know that because of that, that I can, through the forgiveness process, I can say, there were moments I truly loved him. Yeah. Perhaps when I was much younger, and didn't had all the experiences yet, but I don't look back at it in color, like in a traumatic color to the things that happened to me. And the fact that I can help now to inspire other people about this, yeah, means also that something has shifted in me.
I mean, I think it's so beautiful that you've taken your experience and turned it into something so good that you can touch so many people and heal so many people's lives. I think that's just so amazing. I know that when you were last in the studio, I think you said that you had this vision that you were going to touch 500 million lives, and you've surpassed that, which is just so incredible.
Thank you. Yeah.
So to think about like the healing process, like where you were and what you've been through in your life is no small feat, and to come out of it and to be able to do this, so just shows to everybody that healing is possible, and living a beautiful life from that is.
Well, now I can look back at my father and say I am actually, I'm of course not grateful for the experiences, but I am grateful for what I learned from it. Yeah. And so when people say, who's your greatest teacher? I would say it was my father. Yeah. So because, he had no idea that what he did to me would ultimately be my greatest teaching. Yeah. Namely forgiving the one that I hated the most.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I'm trying to do that with my experience. That's what I thought my experience can't be in vain.
Yeah.
I know I have a beautiful child through my experience, but the whole thing just can't be, and that's hence we are sitting here today.
And see what you can do now, being in the show and creating this and supporting so many people with your show. It's like, it's an interesting saying in my language. I'm originally from Belgium. Like they say, well, you cannot turn vinegar in honey. I said, yeah, after a while you can.
I love that. That's amazing. But so Marie, not only do you work with this incredible forgiveness process and you inspire so many people with it, you are the feng shui experts and specialists
Yeah.
and, you know, and world renowned for it. How, like, are there certain things that you should do in your space and or colors you should use or
Yeah.
things like that that will promote healing?
Yeah. So one of the things, it's interesting in the spectrum of colors, and it's really interesting that you have actually chosen that, is actually violet, is actually the color for forgiveness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's also the color of the seventh chakra. But it also means the people that have allowed to let go of their pain and they have mastered their emotions. Yeah. And so I always say to people, if you have a hard time to forgive, get a purple candle, yeah, and do some healing work with like lit a candle, put an intention in it, and say, you know, I'm opening myself to let go of the pain. I'm opening myself to forgive. And the best color to put that forgiveness, the best area to put that in is actually you look in your space and you take a compass and look where the southeast is. And
I'm
the
going to pull out, I don't have my phone with me. I was
yeah,
going to pull up the app and
so
I'll
yeah, you go
do
to the
it.
app literally, right? And you will have a compass. And so the south is actually where you're sitting right now. So funny. And so putting there something in purple, yeah, it can be a purple candle, a purple vase, will actually help you subconsciously, because everything around you works subconsciously, to open up more towards that. Yeah. Another thing is the essence, like an essential oil that connects with forgiveness, is lavender. Lavender, yeah. So lavender, even if you just put like some spray, like you have a hard time and you feel very, you know, emotionally connected with your trauma, and it's very hard to get over it, and emotions come up. Put some lavender essential oil on your arms, you know, just wave it a little bit around you, or take a bath or a shower and do some lavender, you know, infused soap, and you will actually clear your energy field all around you. Or you can put it like you have a hard time and you're very in that trauma experience. You can put some lavender essential oil like on your pillow, like left or right, so you smell that. Yeah, especially also for children when they had like a traumatic experience that day. You put some lavender around them, they will, I'm not saying the trauma will evaporate, but it's just, it soothes down. It's like there's a soothing energy, calming energy that happens, so that you can give it an easier place. Yeah. So you can work with lavender, but you can also work with violet.
Oh, that's wonderful. You know, it's interesting. I received this beautiful gift for my birthday. It is a blanket, and my color is purple. Like it's my color. I love it. It's
Okay.
my thing, and it's this beautiful soft blanket. But it says "I love you" in umpteen different languages, just all over the
beautiful.
blanket.
Yeah.
And it is purple and white. And my friend gave it to me because the proceeds from it go towards helping domestic violence victims. And apparently, the color for domestic violence is purple.
Interesting. I had no idea
Yeah, I
about
didn't
that.
know that either. And I'd
Yeah.
already chosen my logo, like done everything. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, wow.
Yeah, now you understand even more. Yeah, purple is in the quantum field the color of forgiveness, of letting go. Yeah,
That's
letting
so
go of any, I would say, mental, emotional, physical abuses. Yeah.
I have one more question for you. And actually, I have a couple of questions. But one, you brought up children. So how can you protect children in this way? Like, or I mean, some very young kids, you can't get them to write a forgiveness letter.
Yeah.
So how do you start them on a healing journey?
Yeah. So yeah, I have three children, so between 37 and 19, so they're already grown up. Um, yeah, for me, it was always, you know, when something happened in their life, is to, I mean, they learned from very early age on to meditate. So that was one thing. To sit still and tell them and ask them, what do you feel, you know? Because a lot of children, you know, don't know what they feel or even express it. I think as a child, they need to express what they feel. Yeah. And say like, I'm angry, or, you know, I'm in pain, or I'm sad. And say, well, you know, it's important that we turn that around. Yeah, what would be the other thing? What could be? Well, I want to have joy. I want to, feel respect. I want, having fun, or like, okay, let's focus on that. What can we do to go there, right? And so I would actually teach them always to go in a meditation, and we use the violet. We like literally can do that in meditation too. Is visualize the violet, and I say to them like, okay, and then sometimes I would ask them to try to draw the situation. Children are very quick in drawing something, and then I would say, okay, I know this doesn't feel good, but let's. And I would ask them with a violet pencil or marker to put all violet around them, around that situation, and said, okay, now it's all violet, I forgive it, and say, yeah, I forgive it. And it's just like they're drawing all over it, and it's like it all disappears in the violet. And I said, okay, how do you feel now? Oh, I feel so much better. It's a very simple technique that I found when working with my children, and later on, of course, they would say, yes, yeah, I'm willing to forgive. Just that word, I am willing to forgive. Like you put your will, instead of to holding on to the pain, you open it up. You use your will to open up. Now, like I said, some things take time because they have been so deep and so wounded. But I believe if we're, teach our children to express what they have as pain, and to start saying like, yeah, are you willing to forgive? But in the word forgiveness is a big word for small kids, so you can say, are you willing? Are you, you're ready to let go? So my kids he's like, oh mom, I need to work with the violet. Where's my violet marker? So so they're like, they start knowing like, oh, this is the situation. Then they go over like, yeah, it's gone. Okay, right? So it's just a simple technique, but at least in a playful way, right? It's a very simple thing. Give it a try.
I mean, you could even do it as an adult. I want to try it.
That's it, right? Yeah. And so now they're like, okay, I need to use the violet, yeah.
So if there was one thing that somebody you think should start with on their healing journey, what would that be? I mean, you've mentioned so many amazing tools.
Well, I would definitely say the forgiveness letter, the self-forgiveness letter, right? And it's possible you need to do many letters, right? Because just having that conversation with yourself, and sometimes you don't want to go there, but go to the sea, or go and walk in nature, and take paper and pen with you, right? Sometimes it's very hard to do it in your house because it can be that the trauma happens in your house, so go somewhere else. And just seeing it written on paper, it's and you don't type it, you don't put it in notes. You have to really write it from you, and it's a little bit confrontational to see what you need to forgive yourself for, what you're holding on to. But it's such a relief energy that you're like, oh, this is how I feel, right? Because we have, sometimes even in therapy, a lot of people, it takes them a while to be able to say what they feel. But there's something about writing it. It's like, even if it's just a few lines, and you're like, yeah, that's all I can do now. Okay, forgive that already. Burn it already. Like, let it go. So even if it's just one word, like one sentence, just burn that already and let that go. And you will start feeling, by doing this ritual very often, that it's like, and it's a very ancient tradition. The Greeks used it, the Indian, the Chinese. So it's an old ritual, and it's in the pagan traditions. Like, when you have too much emotion, by just pouring it into the fire. Literally, they did not write it at the time, but they would use like grain or rice, and they would hold the grain and the rice, and they would put all the negativity that they feel, like their anger or their pain, and they would pour it like in the rice or the grain, because they couldn't read or write, and then they would pour it in the fire. So these old rituals that exist for thousands of years, that we just can do in another way.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So as my final thing is like, is there anything that you want to share that I haven't asked you?
Well, I would say to people, that have gone through tremendous trauma, there is hope on the other side. Yeah. And if you need help, there's so many wonderful organizations that can help you. Or if you feel you need somebody, there's therapy. There is people that are there really well trained to help you out, to get you to the other side of the bridge, And so reach out to people, don't stay with it yourself, because ultimately the toxicity that pain creates for your body, it makes you sick, it makes you unwell. And like I said, there's so many beautiful therapists and techniques that are out there, and just reach out to somebody and take the step to be healed.
Well, and Marie, before we finish, because I would love to be talking to you for hours and I want to be respectful of your time, but where can people find you? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, I would say the first step is getting the free Mary Diamond app, because they're getting notifications and they get wonderful daily messages also that supports and inspires them. And of course, you can go to mariediamond.com, where there's a lot of online programs they can follow. There's a YouTube channel, there's a podcast available, a blog, all on the website. So there's many different possibilities, the Mary Diamond TV channel coming in. So there's so much free information on YouTube, for example. So there's, really so much that we offer that people can start on many platforms.
Well, Marie, it's been such an honor and such a privilege for me to sit here with you today and share all of this. And I feel so incredibly grateful to have this opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for the great work you're doing and opening, the space for people to listen to people like you and to other people coming on your show.
Oh, thank you. Today's been an amazing honor. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being with us on Trauma Undone, where we discuss all the possibilities of how you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and recover. We're done.
Okay.